Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I, 29 female, met my fiancé, 37 male, 2 years ago. He has 2 children from his previous marriage. That was never a problem. I'm great with kids and we all clicked really easily. And I've always known that becoming a stepmother would bring its own set of challenges, but I was willing to take on the responsibilities that came with this relationship together with my partner. But I guess my fiancé had a different idea. So I technically live in the house I grew up in. My parents passed away a few years ago and I inherited this place. And I've been living here and running a business out of here too. When my fiancé and I were well ahead in our relationship and realized how serious we were, I made it a point to spend time at his place, bonding with his kids, and helping out in whichever way they felt comfortable. Soon I was picking them up from school, helping them with their homework, and it became quite a domestic relationship even before I married. A few weeks ago, my fiancé said he wanted to talk to me and we ended up having a serious conversation. And all of what he said really surprised me. He expressed his desire for me to quit my business and become a full-time stay-at-home mom to his children. His argument was that I'm great with the kids and that they already like me, and kids require immense time and attention, which I should deliver. It was even more surprising considering our plan had always been to move to my house. It made the most sense to us. I own my house, he wouldn't have to lease his place then, and since my house is even bigger, so the kids would love that, and I get to work from there and keep my business. It was a win-win for all. I asked where all of this was even coming from, since we have had previous talks about this, and never once did he mention anything of this sort. But he kind of remained adamant and said that I should sell my place and wrap up my work and move in with him and the kids, and that is what any woman in my place would do. That really ticked me off, because I'm not any woman, I'm his wife-to-be. But I was willing to let that go and consider it a momentary lapse of judgment on his part. I refused to quit my business or sell my place, and even told him we can talk about this more later, hoping we could find a compromise that would allow me to continue running my business from home, whilst being there for the family I was marrying into. However, last week I found out that he did something that completely shocked me. I was over at his place going over all the wedding preparations, and I happened to come across a folder on his desktop filled with pictures of my house. It was such an odd thing that I had to just immediately ask him about it. Turns out he has listed my house for sale without asking me. He said since I wasn't going to do anything, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He apparently even went as far as borrowing the deeds from my documents. It felt so violating for someone to do this, but he showed no remorse, carelessly dismissing my feelings and concerns. He said he knows better and that I would like being a homemaker once I tried it, and that all women end up feeling this way. It was so disorienting to hear that. It felt as if my dreams and desires were secondary to his own wishes. I immediately told him to take down the listing for my house and return my documents to me. I also realized that I need time to myself and process what he tried to do, and that we definitely need to call off a big decision such as a wedding for now. My fiancé was furious at that and showed me a side of his I haven't seen before. He called me selfish and said that I was not ready for a serious marriage, and that women have to make compromises for their family. The thought of walking away from this relationship hurts, but I refuse to sacrifice my independence and dreams all of a sudden and have someone else's idea of what I should be imposed on me. At this point, I don't even know if he ever saw me as my own person. Update. It has been a hard time, but I realized it was a good thing we faced this now instead of after the wedding or worse, years down the line. I know what kind of sentiments my fiancé holds, and I'm afraid I can't agree to all of those things. I cannot suddenly change to be a stay-at-home mom like he wants, and we have decided to call off the wedding officially and separate. You dodged a huge bullet with this one, OP. I know letting go of this relationship must have hurt a lot, because of the future you already envisioned for you too. But I would say it's a good thing this happened before you tied the knot with him. Your ex-fiancé sounds like a controlling, manipulative, misogynistic man. He doesn't care about your thoughts or opinion because he feels like he knows better, and you know nothing at all. A marriage with someone like him would have been hell for you. I'm glad you didn't go into the marriage regardless because that would have been the easiest option. You'll find love again, OP, and when you do, he will care about your opinions and they will matter to him. Story 2. My daughter-in-law has been using her pregnancy to release what she claims are pent-up frustrations she has against me. She refuses all of my help and has isolated my son from me. For example, when I told her that blueberries are good for the baby when she was eating fast food, my son asked why I kept giving her stuff that made her nauseous. Our breaking point was when I noticed her feet were longer and more swollen, so I decided to give her medical-grade compression socks. She retaliated by calling me a Karen to my son. My daughter-in-law, before 19, lived in Bulgaria before coming here for college and grad school. She has since gotten a job in a tech firm, but I noticed that when she was in Bulgaria, she dressed up with blackface for Halloween, and it was still in an old Facebook album. So I forwarded it to my son and to her boss, who is African American. My son is furious and says this was inappropriate for me to dredge up. Meanwhile, my daughter-in-law has reached out to her boss, but he's been ignoring her. Instead, somebody from their human resources department scheduled a call with her for around 4:50 this afternoon and asked her not to come in today. Am I the a-hole for trying to get everybody to see the daughter-in-law that I see? Everybody has been ostracizing me during her smear campaign against me, and I just wanted to show them that she was insensitive and vindictive. Yet I'm not the only one who's angry at her, since she got messages from co-workers calling her the racist Bulgarian bitch and telling her HR is certainly calling to fire her. Edit. So my daughter-in-law was fired. You are definitely the a-hole, OP. Your daughter-in-law didn't ask for your advice. She didn't want the compression socks. She doesn't have to accept any of this from you. So you retaliated and went through her old Facebook posts, found a controversial photo and sent it to your son and her African-American boss? In what world aren't you an a-hole? What she does with her body is literally none of your business, even if she's pregnant with your grandchild. Based on your post, I would guess you've never really made this girl feel welcome in your life. Sounds like you can't stand that your son has a woman in his life besides you. Now for some comments. You are the a-hole. Why would you risk the financial security of your grandchild just to score points against your daughter-in-law? Surely you want a good relationship with her so you can see your grandchild. But you have firebombed any chance of one with her and your son. I imagine your daughter-in-law has a very different side to the story with many instances of your egregious behavior if this is the type of behavior you consider acceptable. Not defending blackface, by the way. I'm sorry, but definitely you're the a-hole. Blackface is pretty bad, yes, but why did you not address daughter-in-law directly about that? Why would you go straight to her work and your son with that information? You have potentially cost her her job, and frankly, it sounds like you did it more out of spite than anything else. Ultimately, you are not the baby's mother. Your son and daughter-in-law are within their rights to raise their child how they please. And unless you believe the baby is in genuine danger, you need to respect the parents' boundaries. Your daughter-in-law comes from a culture where blackface is not really discussed. We don't even have a word for it, and I bet the majority of people don't even know it exists. I would know. I lived there for almost 20 years. In Eastern Europe, we are just now beginning to have the conversations about race that the US and Europe have been having for decades. Most people still use the N-word and see nothing wrong with it. Blackface is bad. I'm not saying your daughter-in-law's culture excuses this, but the right thing to do was to sit her down and discuss it with her. Maybe she's embarrassed about it, but maybe doesn't check her old photos and update her Facebook regularly. You sound petty, OP. You are the a-hole. Story 3. Hey guys, I'm a 50-year-old dude with 3 children. Male 25, female 23 and female 21. And in early 2016, my wife of 26 years passed away from lung cancer. My 2 daughters were hit especially hard by their mother's death as they spent every waking day with her, from the moment we were told the cancer was terminal until the day she was finally relieved from her pain. My wife's death left me depressed, immensely, because it was the first time in close to 30 years that I hadn't had a second half, that I could share my feelings and thoughts to with complete understanding, amongst a multitude of other things, which simply cannot be replaced. It took me a long time to get the motivation and drive I once had back and enter the dating pool once again, and a few months ago, I started seeing a woman, Becky, who I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. I was seeing her for about a month before I decided to introduce her to my kids. I spent a lot of time telling Becky about each of my kids, what type of people they were, and what they liked. I also told her about my wife and how much she meant to them. So the first impressions seemingly went better than expected. It seemed like my kids got along with her like butter on bread. But my daughters called me a day after the meeting, sobbing, asking me how I could replace mom so quickly. Now obviously, I saw this as normal behavior and completely understood it, and even scheduled therapy appointments as a family, with permission for my children, to sort through trauma and any pent-up feelings. Long story short, my youngest daughter didn't show up to any of the sessions. From that point on, she always referred to Becky as my friend or dad's friend, along with passive-aggressive remarks, which Becky actually brought up with me on several occasions whilst being visibly upset because she couldn't understand what she had done wrong to hurt her. My other kids eventually started calling Becky mom, which really upset my daughter, who exclaimed one night at family dinner, "How can you call this woman mom? She's not our mother, and you know that." She stormed out of the room, and I followed her and calmed her down until I asked her the question, "What can I do for you to make you happy?" Which she replied with, "Break up with that bitch, I guess. That would make me extremely happy." This threw me over the edge, and I responded with, "This is the woman I love, and you can't even show decency to her when she's in the room. I understand that you are upset and miss your mother, but I do not need your approval to be in a relationship with a woman who I may or may not want to spend the rest of my life with." After hearing what I had to say, she started crying again, and my other daughter had to drive her to her place for the night to calm her down. Am I the a-hole for what I did? Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. You did everything you could to try to make things right. Offered to do counseling just with your youngest daughter. Tell her you want to make things right between the two of you. But also make it clear that breaking up with Becky is not a viable option. Let her know that you don't expect Becky to completely replace her mom in her life, but it would mean a lot to you if she at the very least accepted that she's an important part of your life and her sister's lives. Ask her to at least consider it for now and tell her you will wait. No a-holes here, but does Becky really not get what's going on here? I'm not saying your kids should be treating her unkindly, but it seems like she's being a little disingenuous by saying that she doesn't understand what she has done wrong. Is she younger and perhaps less experienced in grief than you are? I do think that 1 month into a relationship may have been too soon to introduce her to your kids and claim everlasting love. I can understand your need for partnership, and it is evident in the language of your post. But I think you should consider this element as you work through this with your kids. You're not the a-hole at all. Over 4 years is a long time to be alone, especially after being with someone for so long beforehand. Your daughter is overreacting to you being with Becky. However, I can see why she's so upset that her siblings are calling Becky mom, but that's very subjective based on the weight of the word mom, carried by your family. I would never call another person mom. However, I do know people who call their mother-in-law mom. It's understandable she's upset as she feels her mom is being replaced. However, she has no right to act how she did. She needs to grow up and realize that if she keeps acting like this, she'll only push her family away.